Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining our live session today. My name is Larissa. I'm an event planner at Reactor, joining you from São Paulo in Brazil. Before we start, I have some quick housekeeping. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. While we absolutely encourage engagement in the chat, we ask that you please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional and on topic. The session is being recorded and will be available to view on demand here on the Reactor YouTube channel within 48 hours. Keep an eye on the chat. We'll be dropping helpful links and checking for questions for our presenter to answer at the end of the session. I will now turn it over to our speaker for today. Today we have a special guest, so let's welcome here Ning.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Ning Wei. I'm the lead technical trainer in Microsoft. I'm based in Singapore, so it's my great pleasure to be here today to talk about how to implement secure Azure solution. Now, so this is the session 7 of the 11 Azure Developer Certification sessions we are hosting here. So in the past few sessions, we have discussed various Azure services to help you build application on Azure platform, including compute, storage, and databases. And of course, for the customers in the age of cloud and the AI, and security is top of their mind, right? For most of the enterprises and companies. So today we're going to talk about a few services that can help you build a more secure solution on Azure platform. Specifically, we're going to talk about Azure Key Vault, managed identity, and Azure App Configurations. So throughout the discussion, I'm going to talk about some of the concepts. And then, of course, we're going to spend some time to look at how these services work. If you have any questions, feel free to enter them, and we're going to address them towards the end of the session. All right. So let's get started with Azure Key Vault. So what is Key Vault? So when we develop an application, there will always be the need to access other services, for example, databases, right? So we connect to the databases using a credential or perhaps a connection string, depending on the system you are using. So those sort of credentials or connection strings used by application, of course, are very, very important. And so where do we typically store them, right? So we can put them into files, perhaps, right? And hopefully we don't hard code it. So and then sometimes we can put into the databases, right? Now, so essentially you need to have a secure storage for those sort of secrets or important information, sensitive information used in your application. So Key Vault is such a service that can help you centralize the management of those secrets used by applications. And not only secrets, Key Vault also help you manage keys and certificates. So basically all these important sensitive information that are used by application to access other backend systems and services, right, can be centrally managed by Key Vault. Right now, so in this picture, as you can see, you can develop applications, and then the applications uses certain keys. For example, in this example, so those keys are stored in the Key Vault, and then when your application boots up, right, it can read a key from the Key Vault. Now, so here there is a very important feature about Key Vault is that if you store the key, for example, in those asymmetric keys, right, the private key will always be stored in the Key Vault. So you won't be able to see the private key at all, right? So the private key will never leave the Key Vault. So if you're going to perform any operations which require the private key, for example, you want to decrypt a piece of text, right? You want to create a signature, right? So you got to use the private key to do them, right? So in this case, you can't get a private key, but you can actually call the APIs or operations provided by the Key Vault. So Key Vault is going to perform the cryptographic computation without disclosing the key at all. So that's basically how Key Vault keep the keys secure, right? But of course, that is the only or one of the many security features that Key Vault has. Okay, so Key Vault also use HSM as the backend capability to safeguard your secrets, right? So depending on the tier you use, just like many of the other Azure services, right? When you set up Key Vault, you can use different tier. So depending on the tier, you can your keys, for example, they are either directly stored in the HSM or indirectly. For example, then if you choose the lower tier of the key vault, those keys are stored in the virtual machine, basically, right? But in that case, those information is encrypted. Now the master key then is stored in the HSM. So so basically the keys, the secrets, they are either directly or indirectly protected by the HSM, right? And on top of that, you can also monitor, right? If you or any application needs to access any information in the key vault, you of course need to explicitly give them the permission. And you can also turn on the monitoring so that every single access to that piece of information will be monitored, right? So there will be audit logs. So I will show you how those things can be configured. So essentially, if you can have that sort of centralized secure storage for all these secrets, keys, and certificates, and you can imagine you're going to have, you can basically streamline the management of those important information, and you can apply the security best practices, right, across all these important data. So that's basically what the Key Vault is doing, right? So Key Vault manages three types of objects. So we have secrets. So secrets are nothing but those sensitive or important text, right? So for example, if you have a database login credential, right? So I can save them in Key Vault as a secret, right? So it can be, it doesn't have to be a credential, or it can be a piece of important text, right? Yeah, so you can save them as a secret in the Key Vault. And then the other type of object in Key Vault is the keys. Okay. So keys, what are keys, right? Those are asymmetric keys, RSA keys, EC keys. Okay. Basically a public-private key pair, right? You can store them in the Key Vault. Now, so here you can see that we have HSM protected keys and software protected keys, right? So that is the the HSM's role, as I mentioned earlier, right? Depending on which tier you choose to create. And then the keys can be directly stored in the HSM, or the key themselves are encrypted. The encryption key is protected by HSM, right? So that's the that's the difference between HSM protected keys or software protected keys, right? If it's HSM protected keys, all the cryptographic computation will be performed inside HSM, right? If it's a software protected keys, those cryptographic computation will be done inside a virtual machine. But however, the virtual machine is going to use the master key, which is stored in the HSM to encrypt or decrypt the keys, right? So those are some of the differences. Now, of course, we can also manage certificates. Certificates is sort of a complex object. In the certificate, we have both secrets and the keys, right? So you can manage the certificates. We can also automate the certificate process. So for example, if you are using some of the well-known certificate authority, so if you provision the account, we can use your account to automate the renewal, for example, the certificate. So basically, we will manage the certificates on behalf of you using the account you provided in the Key Vault, right? So for all these, secrets, the keys, and certificates, and also whenever we are using those these type of secret information, one of the important security best practices is to rotate them, right? You have to rotate the secrets, you have to rotate the keys, right? Of course, you have to renew the certificates. So that is something that we all should do, or in our organization. So if you use Key Vault, you can also set up um, rotation policy. Okay, so depending on the type of object, we can either automatically rotate it, or we can send you event notification. Okay, so telling you, hey, this piece of a secret is a near expiration, so you better regenerate the secrets, right? For keys, we can actually do the auto rotation. For certificate, we can do auto renewal, right? You can set up those policies, right? So there are plenty of capabilities in Key Vault to help you securely manage those information. All right, so these are some of the best practices when we use Key Vault. First of all, of course, we want to secure the access to the Key Vault, and so when you connect to the Key Vault, you need to have you have to go through authentication and authorization as well, right? So we have discussed that in the previous session. When we perform the authentication from the application perspective, where we use a service principal and manage identity, right? So the recommended way is to use manage identity, which we're going to talk about that immediately after the Key Vault discussion. Now, so one of the security best practices is so-called the separation of concern, right? So if you have multiple applications and each of them have a bunch of secrets or keys to manage, so in that case, we recommend you to use separate key vaults, right? So one key vault per application, so that you do not have to basically grant permission, uh, which covers many different applications. So in that case, you basically create more risk exposure unnecessarily, right? So try to reduce the permission scope as much as you can by using separate key vault. And then of course, you have to give proper authorization for either service principal or managed identity. And there are different ways where I'm going to show you later, right? But then, only grant the necessary permission for the application. Okay, so least privilege, right? So that is the other security best practices. Turn on logins. Now, logging, there are default. The Azure platform automatically collects metrics and generates some logs. But if you want to have a detailed audit logs for every single access, right, including the real access to your data, you need to basically create a logging policy, right? So I will show you that as well. So you can also, of course, configure to the backup, right? Backup the key vault regularly, and you can turn on the soft delete and purge protection. So those features, once you turn on, you basically can avoid the accidental deletion. You can also guard against forced deletion as well, right? So those are some of the features that we recommend everybody to implement when you use Key Vault, because it is a storage of some of the critical information, right? So from the developer point of view, how do we access Key Vault? So you can either use REST API, you can use SDKs, right? So here, what you are seeing over here is the REST API. So there is a where formatted URL. I'm going to show you anyway in some example, yeah. And there's SDK as well. So I will show you the application where we use SDK to access Key Vault when we come to the managed identity discussion, right? Now, first, let's look at the, so this is the Azure portal, right? And so if we want to use Key Vault, and obviously we have to create a Key Vault first, all right? So the creation of the Key Vault is pretty straightforward, okay? So you can see here, this is the creation, right? This is the single entry, which from where you can see in every all the services we have on the Azure Marketplace. And then of course over here you will see Key Vault, yeah. So we can go ahead and create a Key Vault. It brings up the wizard, right? So in the wizard, you just fill up as normal. We need to have the subscriptions. We need to have the resource group, right? Just provide a Key Vault name, region, pricing tier. As you can see, we have a standard premium. Yeah, so premium supports HSM backed keys, as I mentioned earlier, right? So that's pretty much about it, right? The soft delete is auto enabled. You can configure the duration for the deleted information to be retained, right? That's purge protection. That's pretty much about it. There are some other settings about access configurations, and the network, firewall settings, whether you want to control the limit the access, network access to your Key Vault to private VNet, for example. Those sort of things can be changed, can be configured after the Key Vault has been created, right? So let's take a look at the Key Vault that I have. So here it is, right? Yeah, so this is Key Vault, and so first of all, if you want to allow anyone or any application to access, you need to control the access, right? Key Vault. So you can so you can go to, so here are some of the settings, so there are port protections, yeah, so you can change the settings if you want. And then here is the, you can choose which access control model you want to use. So we have a vault access policy. We also have role-based access control, RBAC, right? So RBAC is generally recommended, right? So you can actually switch between one of these two permission models. So if you choose RBAC, and in that case, then you need to go up over here, go to access control to grant permission to a certain user or application, right? So you basically add a role. Over here, you can add a role assignment, and you can pick the necessary role based on the need of the application. Of course, we should use least privilege. So here you can see we have keyword admin, keyword certification user, keyword certificate officer, contributor, and so on and so forth, right? So there are different sorts of roles which can be used for application with the different access needs, right? Just choose any of these role, and you can pick whether which user group, service principal, or managed identity you want to grant that particular role, right? So this is how you make the role-based access control configuration. Now, we also support access policy, so you can also go to the access policy. So that's the other permission model, right? If you choose to use this access policy, you can come over here, and you can see here we have got the key permission, secret permission, certificates, right? Permissions, and then the user's application is all listed over here. So if you want to create a policy, you can just go on the top. There's create. You can click create, right? You can choose. All these are different permissions. You can just pick and choose some of these, and then you can assign. Right. So let's pick some. Yeah, and then here you can add principals, right? So these are basically the service principals, manage identities, or username, right? So you can just pick from here, right? So that is how you grant permission to user or applications to access your key vault for specific type of operations. And then you can go ahead to configure, so for example, I want to create a secret, right? So as you can see here, I've got lots of secrets. Some of these secrets are used by applications I'm going to show you later. Now, if I want to create a secret, you can just go ahead to create manually. You can give a name. So here are secret value. Secret value are basically the text, right? You want to protect. Yeah. If you want, you can also set an activation day, expiration day. These are optional. Enable, disable, right? So these are, this is how to create a secret. So for example, if I'm going to bring up the this secret, DB password, and you can see there are versions as well, right? So you can, if you're going to modify the secret, you can generate a new version, and you can disable older version. Okay. So when you access that secret, in the URL, you can indicate which version you want to access, right? So for example, let's look at this current version. Now, so this is the secret identifier. So this essentially is a URI which uniquely identifies a piece of a secret. You can use that in the REST API. So this is the URL we're going to use, right, to access the secret. So I'm going to show you that, how do we use REST API to access the secret in the key vault. Yeah, so here we go, right? And so I just click that. And over here, you can show the secret value, password 123. Now this is just a test secret. So yeah, so that's how you configure the secret. And if you go to keys, right, you can also generate keys. You can import if you want, right? You can import a key which you export from the HSM, for example, right? So you can see we support RSA key, EC key, and when you create a key, and you can also set the key size. Yeah. Right. So that's how you create a key, and you can also have secrets, right? So here you can create a secret, certificates, right? You can create a certificate, you can import a certificate, and you notice over here, there is a certificate authorities, right? CA, you can configure CA, all right? So if I'm going to add my account, for example, if I'm using DigiCert, right? You can enter your DigiCert account, including account ID, password, organization ID. So you with that, a digital account, Key Vault is going to be able to use your account to automate the lifecycle management of your certificate. Yeah. Um, okay, so back to here. Yeah, so if you want to create a certificate, right, you need to provide the CA, certificate authority, the subject, DNS name, content type. Just fill up all this stuff, and you'll get certificates here, right? So for example, I've got a certificates over here, and the current versions, right? It actually has done. You notice that there are multiple versions, right? So it actually has auto renewed the certificate multiple times, right? So currently we're looking at this particular version, and yeah, so these are the certificate information. You can download a certificate, in either format, right? PFX, PPAM, okay, right? Yeah, so there is also, you can see there's expiration date as well, right? For each version, you can set the expiration, and it will automatically renew it, right? Okay, so there is certification operations. Okay, so these are the certificates, right? So once you have those data, then later I will show you how we can use REST API to access those information. Then later we'll also look at how we can use SDK to do the same. Yeah, and so those are the different kinds of objects you can store into the Key Vault. And then there is also networking. So over here you can control. It's very much like a firewall, right? So but right now I allow public access from all the network, but you can also disable public network. You can just set up a private endpoint, all right? So private endpoint is the feature that we use to restrict the access to those PaaS services, so that only workloads or virtual machines in your private virtual network will be able to access those services, right, through a private link, private connectivities. Okay, so this is the the security feature or the networking feature that we have to protect the PaaS services. Of course, that is not part of the scope of this discussion, but just so that you are aware, right? This is a very, very important security feature as well. And if you want to turn on the logging, right, then you can go to the diagnostic setting. All right, as you can go there, I can create a a setting, a policy. All right, so over here I already have one. For example, if I click that setting, you will be able to see, hey, you can turn on the audit logs. All right, so where does those logs go? So you can configure it, right? I want to send to log analytic workspace, right? So log analytic workspace is the centralized log analytics feature, right? So you can we can centralize the storage of logs coming from different Azure resources, and it also provides you analytic feed queries. You can use KQL to query it, allows you to query it, and also perform some analysis as well, right? Yes, but if you want to save the logs to some other storage or even external data integration solutions using Event Hub, you can do that, right? So it's all configured over here. Okay, so this is all the settings. Now we want to take a look at how we can in our applications, right? How do we programmatically use Key Vault? Right, so I want to show you, at this point, the REST API access. Okay. Right, so here, as you can see, I'm using REST API. Now, before I connect to the Key Vault to access any secrets or keys or whatnot, right? Obviously, we need to perform authentication. So how do we perform authentication on for Azure services? All right, so that was discussed in the previous session, right? Session 6. So we basically use Entra ID, right? So here, what you see is that this is the URL, right? Entra ID authentication URL. This actually is the endpoint to acquire the access token. Okay, passing tenant IDs, and this is the token endpoint, right? You need to pass in those client IDs, right? Scope, client secrets. Now, of course, you can use certificates if you want. So I'm going to use that, right? I'm going to use client secrets. Okay. So let me send it, the request. Okay, so here we go, right? So we have the access token, and this token is going to be used to access the Key Vault. So how do we access the Key Vault, right? So I'm going to use this access token. So first of all, let's look at the secret, right? So you can see here, this is the secret URL, right? So over here, this is the keyword name, and then the well-known domain, vault.azure.net, right? And then what type of object? Secrets. And this is the secret name, right? And then you can add a parameter which indicates the API version. If you want, you can also add the version number. If you don't include the version number, right? And then it always return you the latest version, right? So that's the convention. Okay. So here you go, right? So I'm just want to retrieve that particular piece of secret. Now, of course, the over here you need to put in the bearer token, right? So that's the token I've just acquired from the Entra ID, right? Okay, so send. Here you go, right? So this is what we get. REST API return, right? They have it tells you this is the ID, right? Unique ID of that particular secret, which also gives you the version ID as well. This is the current version ID, and this is the value, right? Okay. Yeah. So if you want to get the secret, you can do this way. Now we can use the same mechanism to retrieve the key, right? So if I switch to the key, and you can see that this is uh, the URL for a particular key, right? So of course over here we don't use secrets anymore. We use the keys, and we provide the name of the key. That's key one, right? Okay. So we send it, right? So we got a bunch of information. Now, so if you look at over here on the right-hand side, so what sort of do we get a key here? Yeah, so you notice there are a couple of data blocks over here. This is the key operations, right? So it basically means that for this key, what sort of operation can you perform? So if you want to do encryption, decryption, sign, verify, wrap on wrap keys, you can actually call the key vault. Key vault will do that for you, right? So you don't have to actually do all this crypto computation in your application, right? You can actually delegate that to Key Vault. And some of the operation must be done in Key Vault, all right? So all those operations that use a private key have to be done inside the Key Vault, right? Operations that using public key, potentially you can actually do it yourself using those publicly available algorithm. Okay, so if you scroll down, you can see that we get, so this is the key, okay? N and E, right? So one of these N actually is the prime number, right? So that's the basis for generating the private public key pair. But this N and E, right, combination only give you the public key. Okay, you will never be able to retrieve the private key. Private key never leaves the key vault. So if you want to perform any operation which requires the private key, for example, you want to decrypt, okay, you want to sign, create a signature, right? So those sort of operation requires private key. You have to call the key vault to do that, right? So for that, what do I mean? Okay, so if I want to do, for example, encryption, okay, so over here I still use the same endpoint over here, right? But then the operation I'm using over here is called encrypt, right? So I call this REST API to perform the encryption, and this is the text I want to encrypt. Okay, so this looks like already encrypted. Okay, actually it's not, right? So this is actually a base64 encoding. It's not encryption, it's encoded text, right? You can simply run the base64 decoding to get the original text. Okay, so for that, if I send this REST API, and it returns me this. This is the encrypted text. Okay. Now, likewise, if I'm going to call the decrypt API, I just need to change over here, right? The operation name I will change to decrypt by passing the encrypted text, right? I run it, it's going to return me. Here you go, right? This is the decrypted text. Yeah, so this is how you use Key Vault to perform those cryptographic computation, right? Especially those operations requiring private keys. All right. We can also use SDK. I'm going to show you the SDK use when we discuss the managed identity. All right. So these are basically, from the application developer point of view, some of the key points or key steps, right? You will go through when working with Key Vault. right? So coming back to the all right. So the next topic we're going to discuss is managed identity. So first of all, why we want to use managed identity, right? So some of you might know that the management of the application credential oftentimes can be quite a challenge, right? And oftentimes this is one of the weakest link in the entire end-to-end security architecture, right? So there are many reasons contributing to this issue, right? So for example, hard coding, we know that sometimes we hard code it, and even even credential, some of the developers hard coded them into the code or into some config files, and which gets uploaded to the GitHub, to the repos. Those things happen, and inadequate access control, which is quite common, right? So imagine if you're going to put those credential in the file, right? You have to secure the file. If you put into the database, you have to secure the database access. So basically, there are all kinds of different access control depending on the IT infrastructure you are using, right? It's it can be quite challenging to implement those consistent security control that conform to your internal security policy, right? If you have lots of credentials lying around in many different formats, and on top of that, you got to have adequate secret rotation policy, right? Hopefully every 6 months, every 3 months, you're going to change your credential, rotate it, right? And then you need to, if you rotate it, you need to update all the applications, all the config files that are referencing to that piece of credential. So managing the application credential is quite a challenging task, right? Now, what if we don't have to worry about those credentials, right? So when you, as a developer, when you develop the application, you do not even need to worry about the credential. Sounds like a dream? Yes. So managed identity is designed for that purpose. It basically can help you eliminate the needs altogether, right? To manage the credentials. So there's no more credential. You just develop the code. You don't have to worry about all these, security administration tasks, right? Regarding the application credential. Okay, so that's what the managed identity is designed for. So when can we use managed identity, right? So if you are developing an application which is running on top of Azure infrastructure, Azure platform, including Azure Virtual Machine, App Service, Function, Container, right? As you can see, these are the various types of Azure compute resources, right? Even if you are running on your on-premise physical machines, or even virtual machines on other cloud platform, you can also use managed identity, right? If you install Azure Arc, right? If you install Azure Arc, those physical machines or machines running on other cloud platform will become a managed Azure resource, and then with that, you can also use managed identity. Okay, so that is the application, right? It's the source application, and then if your application is trying to access a target service or target application which is integrated with the Entra ID, right? Um, yeah, so it can be Azure services, obviously. It can be your own application which is using the Microsoft Identity Platform, which we have discussed in the previous session. So in that kind of situation, you can always use managed identity, right? Um, so I will show you an example, and you will understand what it means. Okay. Now, first of all, let's look at how does this solution work, right? Why we don't have to worry about the credential. So here, as you can see, there is this component is very, very critical in this case. So we are looking at the managed identity using the example of virtual machine, right? So over here we have Azure Virtual Machine, and your application has been deployed on this virtual machine. So I'm going to enable the managed identity for this virtual machine. Now, so when I do that, Azure actually talks to this Azure instance metadata service, IMDS service, right? So there is a one IMDS service running for every single virtual machine. So that's something you don't see, right? But this is something that is managed by the platform. There is it exposes the REST API. You can actually connect to it, right? You can query some configuration information. So that's why it's called metadata service. It basically stores metadata. Now, so in this case, when I enable managed identity, so we are actually, right, you can see there is a step, right? So Azure Resource Manager is going to inform IMDS service to create a new identity. So IMDS service is going to manage the credentials, or, handling all these credential rotations, right? So there is actually there is a credential, but however, this credential is no longer managed by your application anymore, right? It's automatically managed by the platform, specifically the IMDS service. So when you want to get a token in order to talk to any other application or any other services, you are basically, you can see this step, right? Okay, step number 5. From your application, you are actually sending a request towards the IMDS service, not the Entra ID anymore, right? So you are sending a HTTP request towards the IMDS service, then IMDS service is going to talk to the Entra ID on behalf of your application to retrieve, to generate the access token, right? So during that process, right, which is the number 6, IMDS service is going to supply the credential which it has been, keeping track of, right? And so it will complete the authentication process with the Entra ID and acquire the access token and return the token back to your virtual machine, and then your virtual machine can use that token to access the backend service. Could be a storage, could be a database, could be any other services, right? So essentially the credential is managed by the platform automatically, and is transparent to your application, right? So from your application perspective, you no longer need to manage the credentials. So all you need to do is to send a very simple HTTP request like this, right? Yeah, so that's how the managed identity works, right? It hides all the complexity of managing the credential. So there are 2 types of managed identity. There is a system assigned managed identity, so which means that the managed identity will be created as a part of the Azure resource. So if I want to enable the managed identity for a virtual machine, right, I just go there to enable the system assigned managed identity. So there will be one and only one managed identity enabled for that virtual machine. And when I delete that virtual machine, the system assigned the managed identity will be deleted automatically, right? So I do not, as a user, I do not have to worry about the lifecycle. It's handled by the system automatically, right? Because it's a one-to-one relation, one-to-one kind of mapping. So that managed identity is only used for that particular Azure resource. It cannot be shared, right? So this is how the system assigned managed identity works. On the other hand, you can also use a user assigned managed identity. All right, so it's a standalone Azure resource you can create, right? So I'll show you how to create it. It's very, very simple, straightforward. And then you can associate this user assigned managed identity to any number of Azure resource, right? So which means that it can be shared by multiple resources. So that actually enables certain use cases. For example, if I have a cluster of servers, cluster of virtual machines, I can use a single user assigned managed identity for all these servers in the cluster, right? So all these servers, they are identical, right? As part of the cluster. So they will have the same permission to go to some backend resource. So instead of creating a lot of system assigned managed identity, then I have to assign the permission one by one, right? I can use a single user assigned managed identity, which simplifies some of the permission management, okay? So it can be shared, but the downside is that you have to manage it, right? You have to manage the lifecycle, right? If all the resources, for example, in the cluster example I gave, if all the servers, all the virtual machines in the cluster have been deleted, and then you need to delete the user assigned managed identity by yourself, right? System actually doesn't handle that for you automatically, so you need to manage the lifecycle, right? So there is a pro and cons for both types of managed identity. You just have to choose accordingly based on your specific use cases. Okay. So let's also take a look. How can I use the managed identity? And then I will also show you an application where I use that. All right, and I will show you the code as well. So here we go. Okay, so first of all, how do I enable either user or system assigned or user assigned managed identity? So now I will show you. So for example, if I go to any virtual machine, right? Here you go. Okay, I just pick any virtual machine. For example, Yeah, security over here, right? So identity, and you can see there is a system assigned managed identity and user assigned managed identity, right? So if you want to enable system assigned managed identity, here is on and off, right? It's a toggle, right? When you turn it on, and it will create a system assigned managed identity for you. And obviously, with this sort of a GUI, you can see there's only one, right? You can't you can't have a multiple system assigned MIs, managed identities, right? But however, if I switch to user assigned, I can add. I already have one, right? I can add another one if I want. Okay. So here you can have user assigned managed identities. And that's pretty much up to you how you want to configure it, right? But of course, first you need to have that managed identity object ready, right? So if I click add, you can see those objects, which is this with this little icon. They basically represent the user assigned managed identity. So you have to create a one, all right? So you can go there, go to the creation wizard. You can look for uh, managed identity. There you go. So here it is. User assigned the managed identity. I can go ahead and create it. Sorry, I think I clicked the wrong one. Here it is. Yeah. Yeah, so that's user assigned and managed identity. It doesn't have much to configure. It basically just provide a name, right? That's the most important attribute. That's it. It's just an object, right? Which represents that this is a managed identity. Once you have that, and if you go to any resource, you want to add user assigned and managed identity, then this name will appear in the list, and you can choose it, right? So that's the two types of user assigned. Managed identity. Now let's look at the application I have, right? So for example, over here I have an application. By the way, this is my I also um, work with AI. So this is just an AI demo application, right? So I can for example, I can do some image analysis, right? I can pick a file. Um, yeah, let's look at let's look at this picture, right? This is a picture. This probably you can tell this from Yellow Top from New York, right? So New York Street Junction. I can submit that. It's going to analyze this picture, right? Give me a caption. Hey, a group of people crossing a street with the yellow taxi cabs and a bunch of other stuff, right? So this is basically image analysis done by our Azure AI service, right? Now, when I use Azure AI service, I need to have the endpoint of the AI service, image analysis, for example. I also need to provide the API key. So API key obviously is a credential, is a sensitive piece of sensitive information. So where do I store it? All right, where do I store it? Okay, so I show you first, right? This is my application. This is my AI demo application. Typically, for web application, we'll put all the settings in the environment variable over here, right? In the environment variable. So if I go there, I click the environment variable. What do I have in this case for this application? I do have lots of AI, so I use this, right? Cognitive UIL. Also have a secret over here, right? Okay, so this is the cognitive service, which is basically the key I'm using for performing the image analysis. But if I show the value, what do you see? This is not a API key. This is just the name in the key vault, right? So over here, I only store a reference. Basically, this is a reference, right? It refers to a particular secret in the key vault. So when our application boots up, the application is going to go to the key vault to retrieve the API key using this particular secret name, right? So that's why it's called secret name cognitive key. Yeah. So you can actually, you can show all this stuff, right? There is nothing confidential in my application configuration. Okay. So when I check in the code, when I push the code to the repo, I have nothing to worry about, right? So all these are very much, non-sensitive, non-critical at all. So then I have key vault, right? So you go to the Key Vault, and you can see that if I click the secret. Yeah, so these are keys, right? Cognitive NW dash key, right? So that's the secret, and obviously I can click that to retrieve the API key value, right? So it's all in here. But it's the API key is going to be retrieved dynamically when the application boots up, right? So for the application to be able to read it, right, I need to provide grant permission. So as you can see in my Key Vault's access policy, I've granted permission to this particular application. The permission is get and list secrets, right? Okay. So this application, when it starts up, it actually connects to a Key Vault. So what's this one? What is this? This is the system assigned managed identity that represents this particular application, right? So if I go back to my application, and if you go to the identity, you will see it has that system assigned managed identity enabled, okay? Right? And with that, how does the application connect to the Key Vault? And then it becomes very, very straightforward, right? So if I bring back my application, so this is the code of the application, right? It does the initialization, and you can see here, this is the Key Vault URL, right? So we read the Key Vault name from the environment variable from the setting and form the Key Vault URL, and then we will create a secret client. Okay, so this is the Azure Key Vault SDK. Secret client. You create a secret client by passing the Key Vault URL and the authentication provider. All right. So in this case, we're using default Azure credential. So default Azure credential will automatically figure out, right, what kind of credential you should use, right? We'll look at the environment settings. Do you have a service principal settings? If not, you will use a managed identity. So in this case, it uses a managed identity. So when you initialize, when you connect to the Key Vault, it's going to use your managed identity to retrieve the token, and then you pass the token to Key Vault. That's how we initialize the Key Vault, a secret client, right? Okay, so this particular, so as you can see, if you want to use a managed identity, and then it's really straightforward, right? You can either use the default Azure credential, and you can. So this is a generic class which automatically, based on particular sequence, to resolve, hey, which type of credential has been configured for this particular application. If you want to make it explicit, I want to use a managed identity credential. Yeah, you can use a specialized class, but basically just one single class. One line of code, and you will get the authentication done, right? So it's really straightforward using the SDK. Okay, so once I have the Key Vault client, and then I can simply call, for example, right? I want to get a key. This is OpenAI, but it's the same thing. Azure Cognitive Keys over here, right? Client dot get secret by passing the secret name, right? Then in the environment, I just need to keep that secret name. Yeah. So the secret value will be retrieved on the spot, right, dynamically. Yeah, so that's how we use SDK and to connect to the Key Vault with the managed identity, right? Okay. Yeah, so that's the managed identity. The last service we want to discuss is the Azure App Configuration. This is a service that helps you centrally manage the application settings. So just now I show you the API, the AI demo application, right? Imagine if the application has many instances, many environment. I've got test environment, unit testing, integration testing, system testing, productions. So potentially I can have many different environments, right? And so if I have so many different environments, and every single environment I need to have some settings, right? You can of course store the setting as part of the web applications environment variable, but then that will also bring some administration overhead. Potentially, you can have inconsistent security control. So it's a source of potential issues and risks, right? So what app configuration does is that it help you centralize the management of application settings. So you can centralize the storage of settings for different applications, different application environments. It also allows you to implement the feature flag, which can enable dynamic behavior of the application. So the whole idea, as you can see in this picture, is that all these different applications, when they start, they actually connect to the Azure App Configuration to retrieve the information, to retrieve the configuration that are used by this particular application, right? So you no longer need to store the application on every single application. You no longer need to store those settings on every single application, but rather you connect to a central storage, right? So that's what the app configuration does in this case. Okay, so it provides those flexibility. It uses key value pairs, which is very simple to set up. And it also have the kind of label as a way to provide a dimension. You can query, key value pairs with different labels. I can use label to represent production environment, testing environment, right? So you can actually use that to differentiate different environments or different versions if you want. It also has lots of other features like a point-in-time restore. It has dedicated UI for you to manage the feature flag. Yeah, so we won't go to every single lines, but so these are all the capability that Azure App Configuration provides, right? So all the configuration settings in the app configuration are stored in the form of key and the value pair, right? So you can define the keys in any sort of format, but we typically recommend you to define a hierarchical namespace. So for example, in this in the example given over here, right? So you can use um, you can form this application name, service name, and the feature name, for example, right? In the sort of hierarchy, but of course, it's really up to the application to define. Yeah, and optionally, you can use a label to indicate, hey, this key is for production environment, or this is for version 1, version 2, right? So you can use the label as a flexible means to provide another dimension for your keys. Yeah, so we basically keep track of the changes. So you can do a point-in-time restore, right? So I can go back in time to retrieve the key value pairs, from the particular point in time, right? So those are some of the features we have. Now with that key value pair, you can also implement the feature management. Sometimes we call it feature flag, right? So the feature flag basically is a toggle, all right? It's a toggle which, during runtime, you can turn it on, turn it off, and then accordingly, then your application should change that behavior, right? So the assumption, of course, is your application needs to connect to app configuration to retrieve those feature flag value, right? If the value changes, and then you should change maybe GUI displays or some of the backend logic, right? It provides a more flexible way to manage the feature releases, right? You can dynamically change the feature of your application, right? Okay, so the app configuration provides SDK. So there is in the SDK, there's a feature manager which basically talk to the app configuration to help you manage the lifecycle of the feature flag, right? When you create a feature flag, you can also define filters. So those are some of the capabilities we have in the feature flag. So app configuration, as you can see, it decentralizes the storage of those settings, and then so it's also a critical, data source for applications, right? So it's important to secure that, that this piece of storage. So again, so when we talk about this security, we are looking at the identity and access control, right? So for app configuration, you can use access key, you can use a role-based access control. So you can enable manage identity for your application, and then you use a role-based access control to grant permission for your application to access the app configuration instance, right? So we also have the encryption at rest. You can use a platform manage the key. You can use customer manage the keys, right? For the encryption at rest, we of course have encryption in transit. You can also use a private endpoint to restrict access to app configuration. Okay, so these are some of the security settings of app configuration. Now let me show you real quick how does the app configuration look like. So if I come back over here, Yeah, so this is the app configuration. All right, so something I've already provisioned in my environment. Now, essentially, what you are looking at here, this is where we store all the key value pairs. Yeah, so you can see that I've got, so for example, I have my app, right, a feature one, base URL, and I can show the values. These are the values, and you can use the label to indicate, hey, which value is for production, which value for UAT, right? And then then you can use REST API, you can use SDK to retrieve this information. We also have so you can create that. That GUI allows you to create a key value pair. The value over here, you can see you can also create a key value pair where the value is a reference pointing to a key vault, right? So if, for example, in my demo application, I was using the AI API key, right? So if you want to do the same thing over here, a better approach, right? Rather than storing the API key right here, you can put the API key in the key vault. So you can actually create a key vault reference, which basically points to a particular key vault secret, right? So essentially, it gives you the URL of that key vault secret, right? And then your application needs to retrieve this reference and go to the key vault to fetch that actual secret value. Just pretty much like how I did in the demo application just now, right? We also right now also allow you to configure Gen AI configurations. Okay, so it's basically a JSON which captures various parameters over here. So those are different type of if you click key vault value. So key value is pretty straightforward. Then add the label, then it will appear over here, right? So that's the configuration data that you are looking at. We also have a feature manager. So as you can see here, we have got a feature flags. Beta feature sales weekend. You can turn it on, turn it off, and then your application can either use a polling mode to retrieve those information. We also support event, right? So there's an event. You can also use event notification in your application to retrieve the event, and then upon that, you can go call the API to retrieve the value. Okay, so we will have the event discussion in the I think session 9. We'll talk about event integration, right? So over there we can talk about event grid. So this is event grid indicator, right? So it means that this particular resource supports emitting event into the event grid, then where your application actually can subscribe to it to receive event that indicates that, hey, a certain feature or certain configuration has changed. Okay, yeah. So that's a service that allows you to centralize the storage of application settings. Okay, for multiple applications, multiple environments. Yeah. Okay, so in conclusion, in this session, now this is I know this is pretty short. We can only talk about a few highlights, some of the key points, the key features, right? So we basically look at these three services: Azure Key Vault, Managed Identity, and App Configuration, right? So these are the services that help you to build a secure application on the Azure platform, right? If you want to know more, of course, we recommend you to do a bit of hands-on, right? Hands-on is always the best way to learn technical um, um, products and capabilities. Right? So here's the link. You can go there to look at those labs. All right. So we only have we don't have much time. We probably can answer one or two questions.
I mean, yes, we actually got two questions.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So the first question, Ivan asked, in case of having a central security team that manages public SSL certificates, do you recommend to have a central key vault in a shared service subscription and grant permission to target web apps, or to have a key vault per environment and subscriptions?
We'll have a keyword per environment. Um, Central security team manages the public SSL certificates. Yeah, right. So I guess uh, it's so when we look at the best practices point of view for the key vault, so I was talking about the separation of concern, right? The separation of concern is mainly from the application, from the user of that the policy point of view, from the certificate point of view. So although you have a central security team, yeah, so typically you will have most of the organization will have the central team that manages all these stuff. But if you have a multiple applications, right? So we will, from the security best practices point of view, we would like to recommend you to have a separate key vault for those applications. Now, whether you want to have a one key vault per application, per environment, perhaps the level of granularity, maybe you can design. Perhaps I do not want to have a single key vault per application. Perhaps if those group of application that belong to a particular team, right? Maybe line of businesses, right? So I have different line of businesses teams, and then I might want to create one key vault per line of a business team, right? Which where I can have maybe one or two, or maybe multiple applications that belong to the same team. Those applications can access key vault, right? So yeah, so I'll recommend you still have a separate key vaults, but you can consider the level of granularity. Yeah.
And our second question was from Jesse. Uh, it's like giving permission and privileges in the Active Directory, as far as I can see, but the groups created with those privileges and permissions don't create access redundancy.
The groups created with those privilege and permissions don't create access redundancy. It's not the redundancy. So in generally, actually, we always recommend to manage the permission based on groups rather than individual users, right? So that's in the general security best practices. Because if you're going to have lots of permission, so imagine if I have 100 users and then I have to grant permission for all these 100 users, and so then the chance of inconsistency, the chance of provisioning might arise significantly, right? So using the group actually is not introducing access redundancy, but rather help you enforce the consistency in the security management, right? But of course, when we assign the user into the group, I'm gonna make sure all these users, right, they do share the same sort of permission requirement. That's why I put them into the same group, right? So I just have to do one permission granting, right, for that group, and then to stick to our internal security policy. So that actually can help you streamline the security management and reduce the opportunity of any inconsistent or incompliant um, you know, uh, provisioning, right? So that's one of the security recommendations, right? So if you go to, we actually have some, we have in Azure, we have architecture center where it spells out lots of guidelines, right? In the security guideline, one of the guideline is to always manage the permission using group instead of individual user. Yeah, I hope that helps.
Both Ivan and Jesse replied here in the chat, thanking you for answering me.
Thank you. All right. So yeah, thank you everybody for joining. I hope this session is useful. And then of course we have a few more sessions in this series. So we have a few more sessions where we're going to talk about API management. We're going to talk about event-based integration, messaging-based integration, and also application performance management as well. So tune in again. To learn more how to develop applications on Azure platform. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. We hope to see you on the next one. And thank you all for joining us today. And thank you, Tuning, for the content presented in the session. We are always looking to improve our sessions and your experience. So if you have any feedback for us, we would love to hear what you have to say. You can find the link on the screen or in the chat. And we'll see you all in the next one.